Hi guys. How are you all doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Yeah. I'm counting the hours now till my little girl comes home from college. She has to come home early. Yay. Well, not yay, but because of COVID.
Where's she go to school?
She goes to school at Colby College, and she's an English major of all things. But yeah, so they sent a note home to the parents saying, I think we want you to come get your kids now because it's getting too scary of COVID. They were in green, they had green, yellow, orange, red as the different levels. And they've been in green until last week. And then they went to orange, I think yesterday. So they skipped yellow. So they're like freaking out. So they figured it's time to send everybody home. And Iowa, where I am, is horrific. I mean, it's I think 48% positivity rate or something. It's insane.
Oh my God.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yes, we have our illustrious governor was one of those governors who said everybody should just do what they want.
Yes.
And it doesn't work very well. So
For sure.
Oh, we're down to like our second or third week of 0 cases in Victoria. Thank goodness.
I mean, you guys are so awesome. I wish we were more like that, but
the lockdown had a big effect though. Like it's killed a lot of businesses. A lot of small businesses just haven't survived.
Same thing here.
And between that and
we're seeing food lines now, and it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But anyway, on a nicer note, I'm here to answer any questions you guys have or talk about anything that you want to know about the book, how we did it, what's next, whatever you guys want to talk about.
Yeah, so thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
And let's start with kind of one of the questions I'd asked you before everybody jumped in, which is kind of for you, what's next? Is there another book coming? What are you thinking about in terms of predictable prospecting, even predictable revenue, and keeping that train going?
I have still and always been enamored with how do we set up a predictable sales conversation or series of conversations. So the second portion of the book, the middle section where it talked about sequences and how to set them up, it talked about this thing called the compel with content framework. And I would like to, rather than write a book, I would like to build an application that takes into account the things you learned in chapters 1, 2, 3, adds that revenue quadrant piece, because I'm finding that is the aha moment. So 6 or the revenue quadrant or combination thereof, and build a preprocessor that's tool agnostic, where it guides you through how to create different sales conversations for either different personas or different what I call buying scenarios, the way you buy products and the way that they are selling one product may be sold 5 different ways. And I think I went over that last week, where you can do like a forklift upgrade with the product, where the company is going to change everything out and put your stuff in. Or you may start with a little department, get a toe in there, and then build from there. Or your tool set or your service may be selected as the strategic option for a company. So there's different timelines associated with that. There's different stakeholders sometimes that are involved. So the application would be asking you all these things that I ask my clients, essentially would be in this app, this framework, and then out would spit playbook and everything you need to import these conversations into your favorite tool. So I think rather than do a book, I think I'm leaning towards that. And I've been asked to teach all over the place. And I am starting to do more of that, teaching at university here in Des Moines when there's no COVID, and getting involved with in-person teaching and also the virtual teaching. So I'm getting a brand new studio for all of that. I'm also going to continue with my podcast because I really love doing that. And it keeps me current, which is good. So the book, probably another book, probably not, maybe Compel with Content ebook or something that I'll throw up on Amazon, but nothing published like with McGraw-Hill, nothing on the horizon for that.
Yeah.
Okay. What has changed in your process or even your thought processes around reaching out to people now during the pandemic? Has anything changed, or are you still sticking kind of with your set process as it is now?
We went through a period where the phone was not usable for us. And it's primarily because our database only had brick and mortar telephone numbers like 1-800-university or 1-800-lab. And so we didn't have any direct dial, write in, no cell phone numbers. So we lost that channel overnight. And what it caused us to do is think outside the box, thinking, all right, how do we get a hold of these people? So we relied more on social. And we also studied it to see if the way that we utilize the phone is equivalent to what we can do and say on social. It turned out no. Social is more permission based. So we opened up the conversation with more education related and didn't ask for anything return. If we did have a link we wanted them to look at, we asked permission to send them the link. We didn't do it in the initial contact. And, that became a really super easy way for us to take the phone, flop it into social, and still get the same response rates, probably higher actually, response rates. So the method of contact has changed, meaning now video is something we're playing with, audio is something that we play with, and we still use the traditional channels, but we brought back direct mail because that is now in some circles in favor. And also
a novelty now.
Yeah, right. Right. So, I think at the end of the day, the process hasn't changed. The way you approach a prospect via a channel, be respectful of the rules of that channel. And that is, you can't use one size fits all in permission-based versus more direct versus something else. And then sprinkle it with the new technology that, based on the persona, may or may not enlighten them, or they would be delighted to hear from you that way. I know whenever I do video, for example, I just did one the other day, and I think I got like an 80% response rate because I don't usually do that. I'm not very social. So the fact that I was social, it's like, oh my gosh, she actually talks, so that was something that was unique, different. It kind of shocked people. So, I think that's more than anything else is the channels of distribution, the channels of conversation. You have more tools in your tool set now, but the conversation itself, you still need to add value on every conversation. And I don't agree with the people who say it's difficult to add value every time you want to do a touch. Now, having said that, predictable revenue bumpers are still viable in many markets. Those are you the right guy, find the right person with the touch 1 and a touch N, whatever, 14 or 10 or whatever. That's that breakup or goodbye, or should we continue the conversation? I always front end and back end with the predictable revenue bumpers, but in the middle are all the value statements. And that's something I think is still very viable and valuable.
Yeah, I think sometimes you just have to get more creative to come up with something of value to that person, right? And it's not value to you as the salesperson, it's value to the contact or the prospect that you're reaching out to.
Right. But, what I do with my folks, I think we talked about this last week, is I have a matrix, rows and columns that force us to sit down. And I actually use the lean methodology to do this. So I look at what's the current state of a prospect's tasks. What is he or she doing through the lens of my product or service? What's current state? Where are they having their challenges? What kind of challenges are they? Are there obstacles that they can't get started with this project because they don't have the right tool set? Do they finish the project but finish it with less quality because they don't have the right tool set to finish it with quality? Or does it take them forever? They just can't get it done, and they need more time to get it done than they have. So those are three different unique challenges, same task, but you can describe it three different ways. So in a 10 touch email, you now, if you're able to describe a challenge three different ways, you have three unique touches. Then if you overlay that with, can I describe this task financially? Can I describe this task personally? Can I describe this task strategically for outcomes? Now you've just had the three different obstacles. You can tell three different ways. Now you have 6 or even 9, depending on how you phrase it. So one task you can express in 9 different ways. That's why I always fight people when they say we don't know what to say. Can't add value. It's how you frame the conversation, because your prospects are going to be motivated by maybe some things that are personal versus strategic for the company versus financial for financial gain or to mitigate loss.
Yeah. I guess Australians tend to get fed up with stuff pretty quickly. So my trick was getting like tag teaming with the engineering guys, because I work in IT, and we do a lot of fairly technical projects. So my other trick was to get the engineers to talk to the engineers. So that was another touch point. And it was sort of same end goal. And I wasn't selling to them, but I'd get the engineers in pretty much straight away, get them to just, come and meet them. And then they 9 times out of 10 would pick up something I wouldn't, going, well, hang on, there's these elements we can also get in on. And then I'd get their engine, because the engineers just love each other. So I'd get them in, and then I'd just keep bringing them in. So it was just, by then, also, if they needed something, there wasn't a single point of failure if someone was away, then they'd end up knowing 5 or 6 people. And, everyone has a favorite at a company, whether they say they do or they don't.
Right.
I found that one was my trick, because then it wasn't me pushing anything. It was like, the engineer wants something. So our engineers talk to your engineer and he likes that. So
you can use that resource. That's great. I mean, a lot of times in my world, we can't bring anybody in until we have qualified whether or not we think it's a good fit and they want to work together, because the engineering for us is a paid for resource. So I can't just bring them in at the top. I have got to be able to talk the talk with the engineer myself, but get them to the point where they ask me, well, what's the next step so we can talk to talk to your guys? What do we do? What do so that, but if you can get the resource, that's the better way to go. It's just a lot of times I don't have the luxury of the resource until it's qualified enough for them to say, okay, I'll give you 5 minutes, 10 minutes of my time.
Yeah, I've got a funny boss in that way, whereas we don't have any tech for our sales or marketing, like 0 tech stack. I'm running my emails off a VBA Excel macro, because my boss is like, but you're doing such a great idea. You don't need it. So we don't have HubSpot. We don't have anything. But what I am allowed to do is bring in an engineer from day dot. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. So that I just go, okay, well, I'll work with what I can. So I just start, I get as much information as I possibly can from multiple sources. I'll bring in the engineer as soon as I possibly can. I'll do a bit of research around the client and who else works there on LinkedIn. I excessively stalk them, and then I get the engineer in and get them to look at it. And then I'll get a systems engineer, a network engineer, maybe a voice engineer if I need something else. And then I'll just get them all to tag team. And by the end of it, it's pretty much guaranteed that we'll get something.
Yeah. And if they're, that's great. I mean, tag teaming and working with we're putting our folks in what's called pods right now. And the business development team is working hand in hand with the account executives. And so the account executives are helping with some of the prospecting, and they're name dropping, or they're, saying, oh, so-and-so did this project, 6 months ago. These were the results. So there's a little bit of that, but it's an expensive resource. So we can only do that when the average deal size is somewhere in the 100,000 US, then we can bring them in like that. If it's 50 or less, No, we're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's for me, it's like I've looked at a lot of the American ideas, and particularly things like cold calling or emailing or that, we've got a lot of restrictions. And a lot of people will just delete. Like between that and emails, they're just very they've sort of got their defensive barriers up. So I've had to sort of work around a lot of that and find other ways to prospect or engage with them without them kind of realizing.
GDPR,
Yeah,
they're struggling because that you can't do an unsolicited email. You have to use
that's
the
it.
phone. Yeah. Same
Yep.
thing.
And and it's the same thing where people are getting very defensive of their time, or like, why are you calling? What do you want? So it was more about engaging them socially and prospecting that way, rather than a lot of the direct stuff. Just, I mean, I've never had any luck with it. So maybe other people do, but just in Australia, it's just, I
That's the
can't see.
thing. The channel is everything, and you've got to experiment and find out. And in 6 months, what you're doing now may not work anymore. We used to talk about phone and direct mail. And then when email came along, it's like, oh, well, direct mail is horrible. You got to pay for it and blah, 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 blah. And then email now with spam and GDPR. And so that's going to go away as well. And my friend, one friend of mine, will take your email, but you have to pay like a postage stamp. You have to pay for it. And if he says, you have to basically pay, I don't know, a penny, and then he donates it to his charity or whatever, and then he'll look at your email. So it's starting to even get to that, where they're gating.
I still send birthday cards and Christmas cards because people love them as a novelty. They're like, oh, I got a card and it's not a bill or it's not a letter asking for something. So I still do that every single year.
Yeah.
I have a Christmas card list.
Yeah.
And it gets people's attention. Otherwise, it's like, well, you just want 50 emails they have to deal with. And it's just, sort of taking away from the mundane and oh no, this is a bit.
Right. And that's good. I mean, experiment,
the grunt of it.
Creative. And, the biggest word for us is to be persistent, and pleasantly persistent is good. Patiently persistent is also a virtue, but persistence always wins for sure.
Yeah, I've just found being omnipresent. So I sort of stalk them online and then find out who they're chatting to and jump in on those chats. So I just kind of magically turn up rather than harassing or being overtly persistent or annoying them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just there. No one knows how I'm there. I'm just there.
But that voyeurism, though, is
my husband's just laughing at me in the corner.
But even what you do, it's a habit. It's a repetitive task that you do, and that's that's what is the winner here. You don't have to be super skilled in everything, but you do have to be persistent.
Yeah, and look, I think just taking lots of those little things and like building the email cadences, I've had some luck with. People enjoy them and like them, and I found a lot of people have actually archived them, like, oh, I want to keep that. But just between that and some other little bits and pieces, especially this year, people are just, I find, don't have much patience this year. Like a lot of the time, I've added a lot more socialization into catching up with clients because Melbourne's still technically in a lockdown. We have been since March rolling. So if you can work from home, you have to at the moment. So people are just kind of sick of being at home and they're a bit blah. And, they had 3 months of homeschooling. So they're like,
they're calling it fatigue. COVID fatigue here.
It is. And it's, we've all the Christmas stuff's out here. So people are like, because Melbourne Metro and regional were all separated. And people are now just like kind of gone into holiday mode. So they're like, well, I've left Melbourne. I've gone to my holiday house. So, some people like talk to me in Feb and I'm like, holy shit, we're not even halfway through November. And they're like, I'm out. I've had enough. So it's like, that's 4 months of just bye.
Yeah. I work from home all the time. But before COVID, I was also flying 250,000 miles a year. So I've been home, and I'm just trying to figure out ways to engage with using video. So I've been watching a lot of the Zoom webinars to see how to add different ways of teaching, not just talking head, but using where I draw, because I do a lot of drawing of my processes on I used to do them on a whiteboard, but So I'm trying to figure out different ways to do that. So I have a bunch of camera stuff coming here pretty soon. And my little girl's going to help me set it up. But overhead camera, face thing, have the actual screen shot stuff, and then do a whiteboard. It's plexiglass, but have a plexiglass whiteboard that I can draw on as well. I'm thinking.
That's
and then we do
awesome.
polls, we do breakout rooms, we have, all that stuff now so that people can stay engaged.
Yeah. Are you going to get back
Yeah,
to
that's
traveling
definitely-
when you can, or it's just,
What's that?
are you going to get back to traveling and make that a focus again, or it's more going to be the video
I'm
and
hoping, I kind of like the staying home thing because it's nice. I mean, I don't know, but my boss in Denmark is very much a face-to-face guy. I doubt that he'll let me stay home. As soon as we get the all clear, I'm sure that he's going to just make sure everybody's there for like a 3-week workshop or something. Yeah. I have the remainder.
Denmark's not a bad place to travel to.
No, it's beautiful, but I'm kind of used to staying home now. But
yeah.
are you guys ever going to? Are you guys
Fantastic.
going to go back to work at a brick and mortar, or is most of my colleagues they think they're going to work from home forever?
We won't be going back till February, and if that, and then I have the option of never going back if I don't want to.
Okay.
So I had that conversation with my boss yesterday, and he's like, "Look, everything is going well. Like, we need people because we have physical hardware, so we need people in the office to receive and sort of send out freight. But other than that, he's like, you don't need to be here if you can do your job just as well." I went in yesterday. I enjoy being in the office because we're close to the central business district, so I find it much easier, better headspace. Just I've got a lot of natural light. It's just a great place to work. It's zen. I love being in the office. So, and I work with great guys, so which makes it a lot easier. So I think I'll do a mix of both.
Yeah. See,
so at the end of the day,
my clients are all Europe and Colorado, and I've got one in California, and I've got one in, I think, Minnesota. I have about 5 clients right now, and so no one's in Iowa. I have one in Iowa, but I never see him.
Well, and Melbourne is so big, sort of space-wise. Like, I've got clients that I couldn't possibly get to during a day anyway, so they're far out of. One of my other biggest clients is in Florida, so I mean those phone calls are last thing at night or first thing in the morning for their time
time zone,
the time zone difference. Which is painful enough as it is. But a lot of that will still be online, but just a lot of the prospecting, like people are starting to get back into, I really want to see someone. And I had one client yesterday sort of going, can you come out next week for morning tea? I'm like, oh, okay. They're like, we just really want to meet you. We've never met you.
Oh, that's nice.
We've worked here all year. We've never met you. Just come out. So I'm starting to do a lot more of that. And people are like, look, I'd like to meet you. I'd like to sort of see the face behind the disembodied voice on the phone, or the face behind the Zoom calls. So
very good.
So
I'm doing a class for Australia for Tony Hughes. He's a
Yes, I'm going to look at doing a lot of that next year. I've sort of jumped in with 2 feet to everything this year and then got a little bit overwhelmed. Like, I sort of got into too many things. And then I was like, okay, now I have to pare it back and concentrate on works for me. So, I mean, my metric is purely gross profit, not just revenue, but gross profit. So, I mean, if I make one phone call and bring in what I need to for GP, they're happy. Whereas if I wasn't bringing it in, then they'd be looking at excessive activity. But most of my success this year has been around, I guess, what you'd call account-based marketing. Trying to get in as a new vendor to anywhere has been damn near impossible, because you can't get the decision makers all in the room, or people have been furloughed, or they've taken all their leave, or they're like, look, even though XYZ vendor is just awful and makes us cry, we're going to stick it out until next year. So it's like all the people have only gone with what they need as the essentials rather than any big,
right.
CapEx projects. So I bought on a few, which has been good, and I've done well. But I think 2020 probably most challenging year ever to start your sales career.
Yeah, for everybody. 2019.
If you can do it this year, you can do it any year.
Indeed, indeed.
So Mary Lou,
So
what kind
that's
of
what
tips do you have for success right now? Like in this kind of current world state?
Well, definitely look at your channels and see if they're, measure the performance of and try new things. So, we use phone, we use email, some people use text, some people even fax still. Some people do face to face, there's direct mail, there's social. And, now's the time to really study what's working and what's not, and try to optimize and improve the channels that you think are going to be most productive for you. And I think the other thing is the conversation is changing now because people are, I would say, a little bit more social. I mean, so the work from home thing, is people still want to talk about it. A lot of people are affected here in the United States, especially since we've lost so many people. Chances are someone or you're prospecting into knows someone who's had it, or so sometimes you get into those conversations. And I think, just be receptive to that and let them vent or talk. And usually we don't do that. Usually we're trying to like boom, 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 get everything done.
Yeah.
But I think we need to be a little bit gentler and in some cases, and get, have a little bit more time for the building of rapport. But I would definitely test the different channels because they keep changing. And what worked yesterday may not work as well today. But if you focus on your subject lines and your openers and your unique selling propositions, your value themes, they will always serve you going forward. And now's a good time to practice those, because sometimes we don't necessarily get a hold of everybody. So one of the things I'm doing with my team right now is we're role playing every day. And we're also recording our voice into our phones as if we were role playing or having a first conversation. And are we a fit call or a find the right person call? And we're practicing our openers. And, so we just talk into the phone until we get it to the point where we think it's great. And then we try it on each other. That has been really great. And we've done a lot of that. And it's wild how much we've improved just by getting together. So if you can hang out with a buddy and do some role playing, I think that would be a great new tip to do more consistently, not just once in a while, but put it on your calendar. Like if you're, a daily event or every other day or something, and give yourself one Pomodoro, which is 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, to do that, to practice, practice. And
what would
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
what would your suggestions be for, I guess, if you've got like one of the things I found this year is the sales cycles are just blowing out. And just from what would normally be a reasonable, maybe a month, 6 weeks, whatever, depending on who's here. It's at the moment, it's not that they genuinely don't want to talk to you. So it's like I've qualified for them that they're actually interested, but it just, everything gets in the way at the moment. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's important, but it's not important enough to actually get going on. What would your suggestion be to shorten that sales cycle, whether it's to send more emails more often or overlap different strategies?
What we've been doing, because we've experienced the same thing, and we found that if we're talking to what we call a biopharma account or a biotech account, it takes 3 times longer from initial conversation to a sales qualified opportunity than if we talk to the academic side of life. But we want more of the biopharma. So what we've done is we've started to go in and around the biopharma. So who is selling to the biopharma before us that doesn't compete with us? Who is selling to the biopharma during the time we're selling to the biopharma and doesn't compete with us? And who sells after we are finished installing our stuff to the biopharma? And we've been making friends with all of those vendors. And the reason why we've been doing that is because that opens up the referral channel, which will shorten the sales cycle for you. Because if there's an active project and they bring you in, knowing that you're not going to steal anything from them, you're a companion to what they're doing. Now you have before, during, and after opportunities that will come to you from a referral standpoint. And that is going to speed up the sales cycle because of the fact that they're already in talking to the customer or the prospect.
Yep.
So that's one. The second thing is what you just said, front load with more names if you have them. We have a finite universe of biopharma. So what we're doing is we're going to companies that work with the biopharma and then asking them for referrals, even though they're not in our sweet spot. We're still looking at companion companies that we can start conversations with and say, hey, we're also really great working with this biopharma. I noticed you had a relationship with them. Would it be okay if you introduce us in? So that's another way to do it. It's kind of 10 different ways to skin a referral, basically, to shorten the cycle. Because if they already know, love, and trust you through the lens of somebody else, that's going to shorten the sales cycle, as well as putting more names in and spinning more plates. But you need tools for that, because we would have had to, we do 25 emails a day or 25 touches a day is what we do right now.
Yeah.
If we just concentrated on doing more of what we do, we'd have to 3x and do 75 a day. And we just can't do that. But that's why we thought, well, how else can we streamline this? Well, we can start building relationships with people. So we bumped up from 25 to 50. So we didn't do 3x, we did 2x. We added in the companion companies, and then we built this referral system. And now it's just like running like a smooth machine for us.
That's pretty cool.
What are some of the components of your referral system?
When you say components, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
So like, are you offering them something in return for the referral? Is it just like you really are just building relationship with them?
Building relationships, and we're lead sharing, right? Because, since we're companion, if we're in a deal and we know that the next step is to bring in our guy, someone like our guy, we'll give them a heads up. So we have a very symbiotic relationship that looks at the life cycle of purchase of our prospect, the one we're trying to get into. And we know that if vendor A is in at the pre-side, then about 3 weeks from there, they're going to start looking for what we need to do. So we come in and preempt and then start having that conversation with them. So if we're a natural selection, there is no competition then.
Yeah.
That, you have to know the life cycle of how people purchase, what they purchase, when they purchase, from whom they purchase, and make sure that that account is aligned with your ideal account profile. And once you have that life cycle figured out, and it's so easy with biopharma. Why? Because they publish their drug discovery cycles online. So we kind of know, when they're going to be needing what. But we need to get in on, preclinical, pre-phase 1. And we know we need to find somebody that's already in there and work that, because we can't wait till it's our turn because it's too late. So those are the kinds of things that, really understanding at a deep and meaningful level what your client needs are, prospect needs are at different stages of the life cycle of purchase. My mentor, who I was telling you before, who I'm helping now, I'm actually teaching his staff how to build market share for this new product he has. He has a class that's like 99 referral systems. So I don't know if I have the copy of that or what they are, but I will put them in Slack if I can, find it, and I'll give you like the top 10. But there's a bunch of different ways to activate referrals. Some are, like you said, giving them something in return. Some are lead sharing. Some are just, they know you're going to take care of their clients, so they'll bring you in because you'll handle them in the same professional manner that they do. So there's this, there's this feeling of completeness that you're not going to screw it up for them. But yeah, he had 99 of them. So I'll figure that out. I'll try to find it, at least get the top 20 or something for you guys.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
That's really, really useful.
Yeah.
Like, it's those little things you just don't think of, going, oh yeah, go find them.
Yeah, I always, not that I'm lazy, but I always look for the shortest path to victory, if you will. I very much value my time, and I want to maximize my return on effort. So I'm going to take that hour that I would normally spend doing whatever I do and multiply that result, multiply my results. So get 2x, 3x, 5x, 10x. And as such, I'm always looking for ways to shorten the lag. And I think that, once you start getting known in the industry through these vendors and they have their tentacles are already out there, you're going after the same clients, it's a win-win for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's
I was, no, Valerie, go.
no, go ahead, Ron. No, you're probably on the same topic, so go ahead.
Well, mine was a little bit off topic, but I was going to ask about ideal client profiles. The reason being is for me, because of, I guess, who we sell to. Like, I can be working with other people's IT departments.
Yeah.
So I can go pitch to their IT department or their chief information officer or whatever, or I can be working with people who've been doing a bit of a DIY and they're expanding and then they're the actual business owners and they have no technical knowledge whatsoever. So one of the things I've always struggled with is everyone like, who's your ideal client? Who's your whatever? I'm like, well, I have two of Australia's biggest retail chains, like one in automotive and one in like craft and home suppliers. They're my two biggest clients. And then majority of my others are smaller businesses where, the company accountant or the office manager's doing IT. They might be up to 20, 30, 50 people with no IT department, just someone's kid who's been helping him out. How do you ever segment your ideal client profiles, like going, profile A, big company,
All the time.
here's who I'm
All the
selling to?
time.
He-
Right now, I have 6 ideal account profiles for the job that I'm working in Denmark. We have biopharma, large. We have biopharma, small to medium, and we have biotech. It's all the same kind of biopharma, but there's different emphasis.
Yeah.
Remember on chapter 2, when we talked about the IAP, it was about firmographic, situational, and operational. So if you start to see a variation, usually operational, decision-making processes or stakeholders that get involved, as well as firmographic, you may have 0 to 50 employees take this sales cycle, 50 to 200 take a whole different sales cycle. I'm going to profile those as separate profiles.
Yep.
Yeah. Always, always, always. And I use that when we start, obviously, for the persona development, the buyer personas. I call them prospect personas, but the IAP is the mother to the children, which are the personas. And you may also have different personas, like we have right now an old school scientist who loves to look through the microscope and thinks that's all he ever needs to do. And then we have the new school scientist who was brought up in the internet era and is always looking for, how do you digitize this? How do we do more? How do we get, maximize the number of slides we can do? So it's 2 different people. Even though they have the same role, it's just their point of reference is very different, which means your sales conversations have got to be different because you're talking to one person who's fearful of technology while the other one is like gung-ho. How do I just like zoom to 1,000 here? What do I do? And you got the other guy who's like, I want to look at one slide at a time. I'm not going to put 30 slides. That's insane. Why would I do that? Well, because you can. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the same with me. I've just got it like, even though I end up selling the same services at the end of the day with a slightly different bent, the way I pitch them, one is technical.
Exactly.
One's the nitty gritty, one's the engineers. The other one's just like, here's my problems, just fix the thing. The thing that goes beep doesn't work. It's like, they're two completely different sets of clients.
And you'll find, you may, like when we went in, we built Simon the Scientist. We built one scientist because, we figured they were all similar, but turns out they're not. So you'll start segmenting naturally when you use the persona definitions to start your sales conversations. You realize, wow, I'm missing this whole fear over here in my world, fear of technology. I don't have anything in my stuff to talk about that and how we've got their back. We're not replacing them in any way, shape, or form. They're still the ultimate, decision maker as to whether it's a cancer or not. But this tool is going to help give them and spit out for them the ones they think are positive, right? So the negative ones, they want to look at every 5th one. Why not? But we don't have to because the software is smart enough now to push those aside. But the positive ones, you still need your expertise in order to be able to, differentiate, which cancer treatment bucket is for that particular protein on that particular slide with that particular configuration. So, but that's a whole different conversation. And the young guy is like, oh yeah, I'll put 30 in and great. I only want to do exception looking. That's all I want to do. So yes, you want to segment is you start generic and then you'll find that you segment. And the more that you segment, the better your response rates. And again, like we talked about, shortening that sales cycle. That's another way to do
Yeah.
it. Segment to the point where you have, like I think Aaron used to say, narrow your niche, but it's really segmenting down to that person in those shoes sitting across from you.
Yep.
For sure. Yeah.
Sorry, Val, you could go on with your one now. I interrupted
No worries.
you.
This is actually from Seth, so I don't know if he actually wants to, if he's available to actually unmute. But otherwise, I will ask it for him, which was, he's been outside sales most of his career. So now that he's inside or forced inside, right? Like for him, what's an ideal way of him to actually do some personalization? Because he's used to doing that face to face. Now, what should he be thinking about? What kind of tips can you provide him?
Well, what I would do first is if you're used to doing that face to face, then have you recorded any of your conversations, the face to face ones, or can you role play a face to face one pretending with somebody else? Because your natural instinct is to ask all the right questions to your prospect, and it's ingrained in your brain, but not down on a piece of paper yet. And once you get it into some mechanism where you can digitize that and codify it, that will start spinning out your logic of how you drill down on these questions for your people. That's when you'll know where you need to personalize or not. It's when you take them through your questioning process, and you do probably do this naturally. That's what my guys do. I ask them so many times, how do you begin the conversation? And what is your usual next step? They're like, I don't know. It just depends on what I'm talking. And
Yep.
so, which is right. They're right. They're playing off the client, because if they ask a question and the client answers it a certain way, they may take the right path instead of the left path. But what I'm asking you to do is try to record those scenarios that happen most often. And that is the order that you put in these personalized sentences and emails and touches that you do. It's the same order. It's just you now have to sort of think about it. And it's like you flip that conversation that you had. Say it's a 30-minute conversation, you record it, flip it on its side. And each time you're asking something meaningful that gets them to think, that's a touch. That's a touch in your sequence. And if you do it that way, you'll probably have 10 to 15 that's in one conversation.
Wow, okay. That's awesome. Right now, is there anything that's exciting you that you're seeing in sales and prospecting that you're like, obviously you want to create your own tool, but is there anything new or exciting, inspiring that you're seeing coming up in sales?
Yeah, the deep learning, the artificial intelligence, deep learning, the ability to front end, like Seth was saying, how do I personalize? If you can find your person, like you were saying about going, you're a voyeur a little bit. You're watching these conversations. You're watching what they're responding to. If you can scrape those conversations and put them into an AI tool, you not only have how they enunciate or how they articulate their problems in their language, but it also gives you the sentiment of how important this is to them. So AI gives you a jump off point that starts where they left off in the sentiment and how they're feeling about something, how they articulate something, the words they use, the phrases that they use. And when you have all of that, you can just pop it into your touch points, and they think you're talking like them, that you know them so well because of the way you're phrasing your request or you're phrasing the problem. But really, it's that the tool has found all of the different ways that they speak, all the different ways they express their sentiment, emotion, and it's putting it into a stream that you basically chop up and put into your sequences. That to me is just super fun and super cool.
Yeah, AI is definitely interesting, right? Because some people think that AI could take the place of salespeople. And you know, everybody's fighting it in a different way, but I wonder what's your take on that? I would assume you're going to say no, no way.
No,
You still want
I
a
mean,
person.
now I work in what we call upmarket accounts. So there's usually 3 to 5 decision makers. If for transactional sales, like if I was buying a pair of shoes online or something, and yeah, I get that. High volume, lower dollar value,
Mhm.
perhaps. But when people are making decisions where it involves a committee, it's really hard to replace you with a bot. It just doesn't work. You may get one person to fill out a form who may be researching something about you, but you still need to go through and map, okay, how do you make decisions? Who normally gets involved? What's the process like? What's your time frame for deciding? It's very difficult to get that from one person. You usually talk to multiple people, and I don't think AI can do that for you yet.
Yeah, fair enough. Do you see a
People
future for
like people.
Yeah, people do like people. Yeah.
Sorry,
Do
go
you
on.
see a future for SDRs from a career path perspective, other than just becoming an account executive? Do you see another career path potentially that could grow
Oh
as we're
yeah. Oh my
expanding
gosh.
sales?
Yes. I mean, look at my company right now. I had SDR, and one of them went to tech support because he just got so enamored with the product that he ended up going into technical sales. So it wasn't an AE, account executive. Those are net new people. Though here's how I break it down. Account executive to me is market share. They're looking for net new logos, new money centers, new, a new face. Then there's the account managers. They are responsible for the base, either expanding the base, increasing the usage and penetration of your product, or they're trying to keep the base loyal so that they won't go someplace else, churn, renew, they're trying to get them to renew. That's a different skill set. That's like, someone who is in a marriage and trying to keep it going for a very long time. So that's one path. The net new path with the AE is a little bit like the SDR role, the kind of, I'm going to close this and go on to the next one. The technical sales are the people that get more deeper into the product. They're like consultants. They usually go off and become consultants or advisors or things like that. That's another role. Then there's the customer experience person, where they're looking at, again, the usage and penetration, but because they have this follow-up muscle from the SDR world, they're really great at keeping in contact with people and suggesting other products or services that they may want to use at the client. And and then management, I got my other guy he's a manager now. He manages the global team. And he's 2 years out as an SDR, and he's managing everybody now. So there's a lot of different paths. You can also, the SDR role itself morphs in 3 different ways, I think. There's the SDR that sets the meetings. There's the SDR that deeply qualifies and pushes it into the pipeline for the forecasting at 25% forecast probability. And then there's the SDR who actually helps the AE push it to close one to make sure that all the spinning plates of all the people are moving and progressing along the pipeline. So they become a follow-up tool. They make sure things are scheduled. They do some demos, and they're like a junior AE role. So it really depends on what you envision as a role that you think would be fun to do within your company.
Okay.
And
Can
then
I
there's
ask
the
a question?
sales thing that they actually prospect, close, and I don't know a lot about that. I have a colleague that does that at Talent. He wrote a book on it.
Yeah, that's me in Australia. You don't, because of the rules around it and the fact that as it's culturally it wouldn't fly, we don't tend to have heavy outbound calls. So for example, I'm full cycle. So I'm the alpha and the omega. I find them, I prospect, I find them, I warm them up, I get them through what you might call a funnel. from go to I am it. So getting them through to getting them signed on, getting the client, and then keeping them. It is all me.
Yeah.
Do you see more of a trend as time goes by of people just becoming, I guess, fatigued with salespeople and companies having to rely more on marketing and brand for sales rather than SDRs?
No.
Yeah.
No, in fact, in my world, our guys are blended. They handle all of the inbound, they handle the outbound, and they do referral and partner. That's another channel you can go into as an SDR is if you have partner channels or resellers, you can do that. You can also open up new markets. Like we're opening up China right now. So we're the best people to open those markets up, but we're finding distributors. We're not finding clients. So, we're just finding people who can sell our product for us. And so someone's going to take off and go do that as well.
Yeah.
But I think, the blend, I'm a fan of the blend. But again, it's transaction based. If you do 400 inbound leads a month, if you have enough to do that per person, then you do need a dedicated role for the inbound side, but we don't have that many. So we send the hot, scored, chat, event, and webinar leads all go to our SDR team.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just interesting to see where people are going with that. So, because for example, where I work, like I'm going to head up sales and marketing as of next year. And it's just, you get all these people's ideas on what they need. And then, sort of, I've come from a financial services background where it was very different, where there was a lot more relying on marketing and brand. And the people that went out, the account executives or the BDMs, they already had a big brand behind them and they already had a heavy marketing presence, where I'm going out with a company that's less than 100, not a huge presence in the market, but I've got some good names. Like I've got some solid, brand names behind me as clients.
Yeah.
And that has been brilliant. People are like, oh, you use Spotlight. Oh, you do stuff for Burson's Auto Group. Oh, great. Like they're huge names in Australia. So that's, rather than going off our brand name, I've kind of had to hijack I've had permission from them. So, like we do the IT security for Amnesty International, which is a big human rights organization. So I've had to hijack our client's name, so to speak, and use that as a push forward, just because I'm it for marketing.
Well, we have, marketing has a great purpose, and they are brand distinction, brand awareness. And when we do get inbound leads, when you think about outbound versus inbound, there are 5 levels of awareness. I talk about this in the book. And inbound is the top 2 of those levels, interested in evaluating, because typically they are self-selecting. They're coming in, they're filling out a form, they've done some kind of action in order to get on the inbound radar. When you're doing outbound, you've got problem aware, situation aware, and you've got people who are like, I don't even know who you are or whether you're a good fit or what, who else does this besides you. Yep. So we have to deal with a lot more in our conversations. But inbound is great for follow-up, and we also are great for follow-up. So we work really well with marketing teams for follow-up. The other thing is, right now in the United States, outbound can use unsolicited emails, inbound cannot. So if we're trying to go cold to a cold audience, we need an outbound team to do that with outbound tools.
Yep.
But we work really well with marketing, and marketing leads close at a higher rate usually than outbound. Not always. I mean, our inbound leads close around 33%, and our outbound leads are closing at about, in some cases, 28. We're trying to get the outbound to close up to 40. Why are we doing that? Because of that IAP. We're targeting the people that we know are a good fit. Therefore, we should be closing with a higher rate. We're not there yet. So, that's some work to do.
Yeah. So I've had a pretty good rate. I've had a ridiculously high hit rate, but my boss is like, I want to see a higher failure rate, because he goes, your hit rates, it's too good. So like everything I've gone through via a referral, I've hit 100%.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's great. He goes, I want to see a better failure rate though. He goes, because you're not hitting enough. I'm like, fuck's sake. So I've just kind of gone, shit, first year in, like I started my job in February, 1 month later, lockdown. And I'm like,
yeah,
because, I've come in after 20 years of fin services, having no idea about sales. Like I worked on an options desk, so the clients were there. It was like shooting fish in a barrel in fin services for many years.
Yeah, right.
Finished up with that, worked into this. So I'm like, okay, well, where's the easy money? So I found RevGenius, got into everything else. So I've done where's the easy cash. So I've gone through like a dead clients list, which turns out they weren't dead. We just didn't contact them. I've gone through that. I've gone through like referrals. I've used our partners. So if we partner with telcos, I've met up with them. You know, I've spent our marketing budget on sending out, you know, samples, Australian gin samples to people. Turns out clients love booze. So I've done a lot of that, and I've had a really good rate. And he's like, you know, I want to see a better failure rate. I'm like, oh, okay. Because he's like, I want you to go out more and more and more. So I was like, well,
yeah, he sounds like a lot of fun.
He's actually a really nice guy. He's just got interesting ideas on how to run things. Like I said, so zero tech stack, but I can take as many engineers as I want. It's like, I've literally spent 10 grand in engineers. That's fine, but I can't have $20 a month HubSpot.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a funny one. So it's like I've just gone with what I can. So and because I've come from a computer science background, I can build enough or do enough stuff myself to work around the system,
Aaron
so
and
to
I
speak.
we did predictable revenue. There were no tools. This was a brand new thing. So we used Excel just like you're using. And when I start my guys in Denmark, we didn't have anything. I started them in Excel because we were only doing 25 touches a day. And on the Excel sheet, we just cascaded from column to column when we moved things over. And then we had our email templates and we used it that way. We still made
so our smallest clients, revenue wise, gross profit depends whether it's labor or hardware, but my smallest clients are like 15 to 20 grand a year revenue, and my biggest ones are between 300 and 500 grand a year revenue. So it's not, you know, I've gone and I've built up the ones that I can. So I was like, I'm going in for the easy money, so to speak. But it's like, well, that's where the cash is. You want profit? I've bought your profit. You didn't say where you wanted the profit from. So
now we're getting picky now. We want more on the biopharma side. So we're starting to actually change our comp plans so that it's forcing us to go to the markets that we want to go into.
Yeah. So I've had to go out and do more of that, but it's dealing with failure when you haven't had to so far this year. I'm like, oh, don't like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really interesting to hear about the outbound, the SDR thing that you said. Because it's one of those things I'd love to be able to get around those rules here, but the fines are just too
you
high.
have to work with what you work with. I mean, it's going to happen in the States one of these days. I mean, we've got some things in California already, but at the end of the day, you have to really leverage different channels anyway. So, you know, don't rely on email because email is not necessarily the best channel in many cases.
Yeah.
Depends on your persona, the person that you're trying to have that conversation with, how they consume information, how they like to view information, listen to information, hear information, whatever it is, that drives how you reach out.
Yep. That's awesome. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Marylou, thank you for the time. Any last thoughts? You want to leave us with some great insight that just popped into your head?
Just be persistent and make sure that you don't get stagnant in your conversations. And, you know, of the 3 stools of predictable prospecting, which is sales skills, sales process, and habit, the habit is the one that if you can be consistent, you will make your numbers. And once you start making your numbers, then you're going to be optimizing. So the other thing to leave you with is always look to take that hour and try to multiply your results. How can I multiply my results? How can I spend the same amount of time but get double the amount of outcome?
Yeah.
And you'll be fine.
Sounds great. Great advice for everyone, young SDRs to account executives to sales directors and leaders, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this. It was great. And I hope you guys have more education and learn a lot on the site. It's a little overwhelming for me. There's so much stuff, but I'm here. If you ever need me, you can just message me and I get notices when it's time to respond. So feel free to get back to me if you have any questions.
Sounds great.
Thanks
you
so much for your time today.
All right, you guys take care. Have a wonderful rest of your week. And for the Americans, Thanksgiving is next week. And you guys have something similar to that in Australia? No.
Oh, we have Australia Day, but there's a lot. I guess similar to the US, the Australia was colonized by the English,
Yeah.
but there's a long rich indigenous history. So it's becoming more and more of a sour taste.
Okay.
Because our flag, incorporates the Union Jack in the corner, which a lot of people are like, well, there were people here for 10,000 years before the English. So
Yeah, before, yes.
so it's becoming a lot more of a sour taste in people's mouths. So we have Australia Day on the 26th of Jan, but other than that, no, the next holiday we've got is Christmas, but then we take our big break is Christmas. So
Yeah.
a lot of companies, they'll shut down just before Christmas and then not go back to full capacity until February. So that's our big,
fun.
well, because this has come out, it's now like about 30 degrees. So what did I say? 86 Fahrenheit. I did this last week. It's 86 Fahrenheit here today. I've got to convert for you guys because
Yeah, it was 70 in Des Moines, 70 Fahrenheit. So it's like,
yeah. So it's well, we work in Celsius, so I have a converter every time I talk to Americans because they're like, "What's a Celsius?"
Yeah.
But like our big break is Christmas, so that's our big thing, and it's people are sort of retail's picking up here. It goes state by state because we've all been locked down in different things. So Victoria's now okay, but now South Australia, the next state across, they've gone into a 2-week shutdown because they've had an outbreak of 20, which has come from nowhere.
Oh, wow.
So, and now we're under huge pressure because our one of the biggest exports, apart from being a huge agricultural exporter, is education. So we have a lot of international students here particularly from the APAC region. China's a huge trading partner for us. So one of the worry here is that what happens when we open our borders and you get false negatives and then you get another outbreak.
Scary stuff. Well, why can't I forget? I always forget what it's called. Not the injection. What the vaccine is on its way.
Yeah.
It's coming soon.
So Dolly Parton funded that.
Yes, I know. I saw that. So yay.
Greatest woman on earth. I'm a huge Dolly Parton fan.
Yeah, she's wonderful. And
I love Dolly Parton.
She had a lot of wise words because the Americans right now, we